LGBT ideology? Well, maybe.
I knew that I was transgender since I was 4.
Another man playing women's football, celebrated by the BBC. Plus,
The land scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent, and I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent.
there will be no refund from Rwanda, and this child sex abuser will be one of the first released early under this Labour government. Also,
and it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you.
Nigel Farage slams John Bercow in his first Commons speech, and fears grow for Joe.
Has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No.
Broadcaster and columnist Esther Cracker is on my panel, along with Director of the Centre of Immigration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and author Amy Nicole Turner. Oh, yes. And can you guess what Keir Starmer said next here?
Do you accept that there's a problem with the relationship between the Labour Party and British Muslims at the moment?
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Let's just give illegals a load of cannabis and a free house. Next.
The top story is at just after 9 o'clock. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is on his way to a NATO summit in Washington, saying he remains committed to increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP and will do so following a review of defence strategy. He added Labour's planning to conduct an entire review of Britain's defence capabilities.
My message is very, very clear that this NATO summit is an opportunity for allies to stand together, to strengthen their resolve, particularly in light of that appalling attack against Russian aggression. I'm pleased to have the early opportunity to affirm and reaffirm Labour's strong support, unshakable support for NATO. We're a founding member. It's now the 75th anniversary. But this is an opportunity to send that message in relation to Russian aggression wherever. But that attack last week was appalling, and so the message is even more important now than it was before.
Sir Keir Starmer. Well, earlier on today, MPs were busy being sworn in as Labour ministers sat on the front bench for the first time in 14 years. 643 MPs gathered ahead of Parliament's state opening, which is slated for next week. Sir Keir Starmer speaking for the first time at the dispatch box as Prime Minister.
Now, as in any new Parliament, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed, and to replace that politics of performance with the politics of service. Because service is a precondition for hope and trust, and the need to restore trust should weigh heavily on every member here, new and returning alike. We all have a duty to show that politics can be a force for good. So whatever our political differences, it's now time to turn the page, unite in a common endeavour of national renewal, and make this new Parliament a Parliament of service.
Well, in response to that, Rishi Sunak, now leader of the opposition, held out the olive branch to Sir Keir Starmer.
Can I start by congratulating the Prime Minister on his election victory, and as he takes on his formidable task, he and his family deserve the good wishes of all of us in this House. Now, in our politics, we can argue vigorously, as the Prime Minister and I did over the past 6 weeks, but still respect each other. And whatever disputes we may have in this Parliament, I know that everyone in this House will not lose sight of the fact that we are all motivated by our desire to serve our constituents, our country, and advance the principles that we honourably believe in.
Rishi Sunak, the now leader of the opposition. Well, in news away from politics, Dyson is to cut up to 1,000 jobs as part of a global restructuring programme for the company. The Wiltshire-based appliance manufacturer employs about 3,500 people right across the UK and is best known for the invention of the bagless vacuum cleaner, innovative home cooling fans and hair styling products. And as if you didn't know, the England squad has been training today ahead of the Euro 2024 semi-final tomorrow. Gareth Southgate's side will face the Netherlands at Signal Iduna Park in Dortmund. All 26 players taking part in the lunchtime training session today ahead of making their trip from their Blankenheim base. We wish them luck. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
There is absolutely no deterrent for illegal immigrants anymore. A new report has found illegal migrants are openly smoking cannabis in a detention centre and staff just leave them to it. The vast majority of them are released from detention centres, even if they might one day be deported, which, shock horror, it turns out they almost definitely won't be. Even criminal illegals who had volunteered to be deported were not being removed quickly, according to this report. Most failed asylum seekers held for deportation are released. 3,708 illegals were released from prison, yes, from prison, more than 5 years ago and are still living in Britain. Apparently, the problem was compounded by the fact that staff at the Home Office were saying they didn't know if one of the detention centres near Heathrow Airport would even be open in a few months' time, so they couldn't recruit people to work on the site. Well, could it be that Labour will now shut that detention centre and others like it down? I mean, that would hardly be surprising, wouldn't it? Sir Keir Starmer has just scrapped the Rwanda plan. Rwanda, by the way, will not be giving us a refund for that. And the man who wrote this report into the site near Heathrow Airport made this recommendation. Nobody should be detained in an immigration removal centre unless they are going to be removed quickly from the country. Yet around 60% of detainees were released from the centre, with only 1/3 deported. He added that it begged the question why so much taxpayers' money was being spent keeping them locked up in the first place. I mean, I can think of a few reasons, can't you? But civil servants at the Home Office advised then Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick that the best thing to do would be to clear the backlog by having a total amnesty. Now, he refused that. Will Labour do the same? Labour have already confirmed that successful asylum seekers will be eligible for the 1.5 million new houses they're planning on building in the next 5 years. We have not yet appointed a head of this new Border Command unit, or whatever the heck they're calling it. We haven't yet introduced new counter-terror laws to smash the gang. So I do ask you, as we sit here today, is there any deterrent at all to stop illegal immigrants coming to Britain? Or actually, has it just become a lot more desirable? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I'm joined by columnist and broadcaster Esther Crackey. I've also got the director at the Centre for Immigration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and I'm joined by author Amy Nicole-Turner. Stephen, I'm going to start with you on this at the moment. I mean, why don't we just cut out the middleman and give a load of illegal migrants a load of cannabis and a free house?
Well, it'd certainly be a lot cheaper in the Border Force Agency and save us the money that we're spending, about $1 billion a year on that. But I do find it laughable that the person who's written this report that says, OK, let's not host them in detention centres, let's effectively let them go straight away, when we know from our research that since the 2000 to 2022, 578,000 and a few odd change of those who made asylum were rejected on first initial decision. So we do know a lot of them were not actually being able to pass through the asylum process as being genuine asylum seekers on first process. And out of those 578,000, a few more do get through, probably about another 30%. But we've probably got somewhere in around 37,000 a year that are rejected. So we're talking over 500,000 since 2000 who've not been sent back. And where does the cost go? It doesn't come from the Home Office. It's pushed onto the local authorities. So that is the lie that comes out. It's the hidden numbers. We take it off the Home Office books, and that's what Starmer wants to do. Look at us. We're brilliant. We're fantastic. There's no one queuing anymore. There's no one in deportation centres. But I am now having to give more money to local authorities where the hidden numbers are.
Yeah, Esther, I can't help but feel as though, looking at all this now, what is the deterrent for an illegal immigrant now?
Well, there is no deterrent, basically, because the system doesn't work. I don't think people understand the scale of the chaos and the way that the system is being abused. I mean, at the moment, there are about between 800,000 and 1.2 million illegal immigrants in Britain. And to Tony Blair's credit, and you don't hear this very often, he tried to implement an ID card system. Now, the reason why we're seeing a lot of people crossing the channel from France is because, unlike the UK, many European countries have a national ID card system. So it makes it easier to identify the people that are in this country, their immigration status, and to deport them. Now, we haven't implemented that, but that just means that it's a lot easier for people to get lost in the underbelly of society. Now, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that a lot of the people that go to nail shops, for instance, most of them are cash only, most of them don't speak English, a lot of Turkish barber shops, cash only, a lot of these shops that you can't possibly think, how do these businesses turn a profit?
Yeah.
But they keep existing, and a lot of the staff don't speak English and it's cash only. We know this is happening. We know where these people are going. We know how they get integrated into British society and kind of live in parallel lives across the rest of the population. The system is just doesn't work enough to do anything about it. That's the problem.
Yeah, Amy, I mean, you know, I think this will come as a bit of a shock to people to learn that in a detention centre right next to Heathrow Airport, cannabis is just being rolled up on the tables in the communal area. Yeah.
Where did they get it?
And the staff are saying, oh, it's all right, it's not really my problem, and they're just shutting the door on it. I mean, what are we playing at? This is a complete circus.
I think, to me, that's one of the least shocking things about that detention centre. That detention centre is full of people who have been found that they don't have the right to remain in the UK, or people who had false claims, or people that they can't really tell whether their claim is authentic or not, who are waiting to leave to go back to their country. There are people there begging to go back to their countries, but they're not being given the chance to leave. They're being trapped there. It's like being in a prison. It's very, very much like being in a prison. They can't make any money. They have horrendous mental health problems. Probably the most shocking thing that I've heard about this detention centre is the suicide rate. There are examples. There was an example of a Colombian student whose student visa expired. He was staying here illegitimately, but I wouldn't call him a massive criminal. He ended up taking his own life as an engineering graduate. So that's the real shocking thing to me, not the fact that they're rolling joints.
OK.
Well, I mean, yes, deporting them, and we should use the word deporting them, is also another big issue because their countries.
We don't even
we don't
deport
deport anyone to Afghanistan, for instance. So that's a whole like I think a 12% of people that are not eligible to, in terms of nationality, are not eligible to remain in the UK in terms of the nationalities that are refused and are still here because we can't deport them. You have over 12,000 foreign national offenders that cannot be deported because of the European Court of Human Rights, and all of these sort of courts and charity industrial complex that are keeping these people here. The system doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. But just on this, because I'll come to you now. Reading between the lines here, so I interviewed when he was then Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, and he said when he took the role, the civil service advised him, well, look, to clear the backlog, just have an amnesty. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. So one would imagine that the same advice is going to be given to this Labour government now. It will be interesting to see how they do that. The person who wrote this report into this particular detention centre seemed to be saying, well, what's the point in having them there if we're not going to get rid of them, you know, remove them quickly? We know we can't remove them quickly. Reading between the lines there, that's a case of, well, what's the point in having a detention centre? You know, they know now if they come, even if they do end up in a detention centre, you know, you can just get high on cannabis the whole time before you're released out.
Keir Starmer's going to be the King Canute of immigration policy.
Nobody wants to end up in one of those detention centres. That's absurd.
Pretend that he's going to hold it back. But actually, at the moment, there's no doubt, sitting there, the kingpins of the asylum process who are sitting there knowing they're making 250 million to 500 million a year, doing that with their hands. They're going, I'm great, thanks very much, Labour, because just as Biden did it in America, where we got 3.5 million in, we're all going to work together to get more in, more money for us, more people trapped in this country, paying us fees in modern-day slavery, and it will be the Labour Party's lack of a possibility of sending these people back and any deterrence that is at fault.
But these centres are being run by private companies. These private companies are doing amazingly well. It's big business, isn't it? What an amazing governant contract to receive.
Oh, absolutely. I've said this about housing.
The contractors. If you have an Iranian passport, an Afghanistan passport, you cannot be sent back. We don't have return agreements with these people. So instead of when you say that these people would like to be sent back, actually they know very well that coming into the UK,
they can't be sent back.
Then if they refuse, they cannot be sent back.
Then quite often there were examples of, say, 300 people people just being led out of this detention centre because they can't be sent back, and then they're led into destitution because they're given no support and no way of integrating into the UK. And then you're surprised when they show up in the criminal justice system.
But if you give them the money, you're just encouraging more to come over. Literally, if you're rejected from your asylum application because you're not a genuine refugee, and then suddenly you go to Manchester, you've been given a house, you've got benefits.
But that never happens.
What it is literally about to happen, Amy.
That's what's happening
this is the thing, and this is what I'm asking. What is, Amy, what is for you now the deterrent for coming to Britain? What is it?
Do you know what I think we always lose sight of? The deterrent. The deterrent surely is boarding a completely unsafe vessel that's probably
it's not a deterrent, is it? Because they're doing
and
it.
Leaving all of your worldly possessions and family. That's a massive deterrent. If you're on that dinghy, you clearly don't have a choice, do you?
If that was a deterrent, we wouldn't have had
what would it?
I'm sorry, with all due
1.15
respect,
million
I
people.
think you need to spend 3 months in the Congo, and I think you need a reality check of how most people in other parts of the world live. If you think that is, for some people, the most desperate and horrible thing they will go through, that is the most naive perspective I have ever heard. For many people making that journey, even ending up in the UK and getting £1 a day from the government is a dream come true. This idea that their mental health is suffering because they've landed in somewhere like Britain with all the resources that they're entitled to is ludicrous.
But it is the case.
It's not the case.
There are plenty of people who have lost their lives in those detention centres because of the squalid conditions.
But if it was a deterrent, 1.1 million people have left. They'll keep coming. It's not a deterrent.
One of the other aspects of this is the thousands of people who were released from prison 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And are still here. I mean, it is... We are not deporting anyone, really.
No.
We're not deporting anyone. And this is not, fine. The question for me now is looking forward, what are Labour going to do about this? I think that's a reasonable
it's very clear what Labour are going to do.
Well, yeah, fine. But, we cannot get around the fact that this situation has been allowed to happen. Like, we are where we are now, and the Conservatives were in power for 14 years. And this is a shocker. So this is not just an entire bash Labour thing, but it is worthwhile, I think, having a look at, what is going to happen now.
We're deporting more people under the last Labour government, so it's actually not a bash Labour. This is the thing. This is the problem. This is a cross-party consensus on this issue.
Absolutely. They agree.
Under
They
Tony
all
Blair's
agree.
Premiership, we deported a lot more. It was actually a much more efficient system.
But we still detain more people than the whole of Europe.
It's about having a system that works.
Well, we will watch this space, but we'll be keeping a rather close eye on it, and believe it or not, things might manage to find a way of getting worse. But anyway, coming up, the 1922 committee has a new chair, but some Tories are livid with allegations that it was a bent election. Brexit Spartan Mark Francois will be frothing live in the studio very, very shortly. Plus, look who's finally made it to Westminster's green benches.
And it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you.
Expect fireworks, folks. But up next, what do you make of this from Suella Braverman?
That I was a member of a government that presided over the mutilation of our children in our hospitals and from our schools.
So she sparked outrage in the usual quarters. But did she really go too far? Have we been captured by LGBT ideology? Social commentator and writer James Esses goes head-to-head with LGBT rights campaigner Peter Tatchell. That's next. Stay tuned.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back. Stefan Kyriazis has, as ever, been to the theatre and saw one of the most successful performers of the modern age, one who has made his name in different genres on television and is always a magnetic presence on the stage. About whom are we talking, Stefan?
We're talking about James Corden at the Old Vic for The Constituent and its Traverse staging. So audience on either side, and it's a fantastic experience. But also it's been done this time to bring everything in a lot and make it quite intimate, because you just have one simple set. It's just a table, office space. This is a new play by Joe Penhall, and it's addressing very, very current issues of safety, especially for people in public service. Doctors, nurses, teachers, and of course, as you know, politicians that are at risk and being attacked. So we have Joe Cox, Sir David Ames, and we have politicians talking about cancelling their surgeries, not wanting to appear in public, teachers being threatened. And James Corden plays an ex-serviceman who is going through a difficult divorce, dealing with a lot of PTSD, also feeling very much like fathers are overlooked, and he wants to fight for their rights. And an old school friend is a local MP, played by Anna Maxwell Martin. And he goes in to start talking to her, and it starts off quite chummy and jovial, and then it darkens and darkens. He gets quite aggressive and frustrated. She wants to help. She's an absolute idealist. This politician sense of we don't choose who we work for. You know, we are here by duty to work for everybody in our constituency. It spirals a lot. I have to say, Corden, sensational. Really? He really is a fantastic actor. Of all of them, he's so natural. And he has the most difficult role where his character is shifting all the time and becomes potentially quite threatening and dangerous. But then there's also a beautiful catharsis at the end.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, yes, coming up, I am going to be joined by Mark Francois, the so-called leader of the Five Families. He's absolutely fizzing because apparently, in a scene of complete calm, the Conservative Party have managed to absolutely butcher their attempt to elect the new chair of the 1922 Backbench Committee. So we'll be getting stuck right into that. But first, did Suella Braverman go too far with her comments condemning the progress flag? It's time now for our head-to-head. So, Suella Braverman has made a blistering speech at the National Conservatism event in Washington, stating that the progress flag, an updated version of the pride flag, flew over government buildings as if they were, quote, occupied territory. We can have a little listen.
Far, far too many Tory politicians agreed, and still agree, that the progress flag must be flown. To be kind, to be inclusive. It shows how liberal and progressive we are. And that's what many Conservatives want us to be. Well, the progress flag says to me, it says to me one monstrous thing, that I was a member of a government that presided over the mutilation of our children in our hospitals and from our schools.
Well, she added that left her feeling physically repulsed. Now, radical gender ideology has frequently been reported from within Whitehall. So just last year, civil servants were encouraged to use their own pronouns in email signatures and to use neutral language when other people's were not known. More recently, The Telegraph discovered that staff in the Department for Work and Pensions shared a 30 Days of Pride calendar with daily videos and articles on topics including transgender children. But did Braverman go too far with her comments? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GBNews and make sure you go and vote in our poll. But I'm joined now by LGBT rights campaigner Peter Tatchell and social commentator and writer James Esses. James, I will start with you because you have some experience of what it's like in the civil service. Now, Suella Braverman's comments for me there were more of a sign of actually she wasn't in control because she wanted that flag taken down and she couldn't get it. Do you think she's right to say that it was like occupied territory?
Completely. This ideology has taken over all areas of society and all societal institutions. I myself previously worked in the Home Office, And I saw this operating throughout every layer of the organisation. And if you're in a position where the Home Secretary herself cannot row back on some of these regressive policies or this ideological symbolism, then what hope is there for a lowly civil servant just working in a policy role? You know, and we've just seen Pride Month come and go, and I think that was probably the clearest example of the ideological take.
Well, it's not come and gone if you take a stroll down Regent Street at the moment in London, because it's still very much there. We've had D-Day during this month, and the Pride flag was up there and not the Union flag. England are in the semi-finals of the Euros. There's not a St George's Cross in sight, is there? It's all still very much the Pride stuff. Peter, what is the Progress flag, then? Because this is not just the rainbow flag, is it?
It's the traditional rainbow flag symbolising the LGBT plus community, but it's also got additional chevrons on it to symbolise trans and bisexual people, black and ethnic minorities, and intersex people. So it's trying to be inclusive for everyone. But I want to add a comment about what you said. LGBT people are not an ideology. We are human beings. We're part of British society. We have human rights. To celebrate our community, and indeed any community, is a good thing, a positive thing. It's not about imposing, it's about celebrating the diversity of British society.
It's an ideology, though, isn't it?
It's not an ideology.
Well, let me finish. It is an ideology, though, isn't it, to deny basic biological gender rules. That's a theory, isn't it? That's not biological fact.
Well, that's a separate issue.
Well, it's not. You know, it's got it all on that same flag, and it's hoisted above our government department.
Yeah, the LGBT plus community is very diverse. And thankfully, most people in British society today accept LGBT plus people. They don't agree with these culture wars. They believe in respecting other people and human rights. The comments made by Suella Braverman could have been made by neo-Nazis like the National Front or the BNP years ago. Those were so outrageous comments, and she's been condemned by fellow Conservatives.
I'm going to start getting a buzzer, right, for whenever anyone brings up the Nazis, when it comes out, anything any Tory says.
No, I said neo-Nazis. I said neo-Nazis. The National Front.
Yeah, Peter, can I say that's an absolutely abhorrent accusation to make? I'd just like to return some of the points that you made. I mean, it's ironic that this is called the Progress Pride flag, when actually it is a symbol of regression. This flag is being used to justify the experimental medical transitioning of children. I mean, there's nothing more regressive than suggesting to young boys and young girls that if they don't conform to certain sex stereotypes, that they might be trapped in the wrong body. And I've seen people from certain LGBT plus groups use this flag as a way to justify their perversions, including sexual attraction to children and even animals. They supposedly fall within this rainbow umbrella. To accuse Suella Braverman of being akin to a BNP member or a neo-Nazi, I think is an absolute disgrace. She is concerned about the safeguarding of children, the protection of women's rights, and the protection of freedom of speech.
Well, she accused her government, of which she was a part of, and said nothing, of mutilating children. First of all, it is impossible for any child in this country to have gender reassignment surgery. That is forbidden. Just recently, puberty blockers have been banned. So the idea that children are being mutilated by this government or any previous government is absolutely wrong. It's factually inaccurate.
That's not true, Peter.
It's factually inaccurate.
Peter, the definition of mutilation is severe bodily harm that has a ruinous impact on somebody's life. Puberty blockers, which, yes, now, thankfully, at last, have been prohibited, but have been for a long time in this country used on children as young as 9 years old. It's caused brain development issues, bone growth issues. We know that children 16 years old have been receiving cross-sex hormones, some of whom have been left permanently infertile, and children as young as 17 years old in Scotland have been placed on waiting lists for double mastectomies. So children very much have been and continue to be mutilated.
You want to bring this down to the trans issue. Trans is just one section of the wider LGBT plus community. Some people in the community support your view, others don't. Most people believe that trans rights are human rights. There can be a debate about the issues about women's rights and women's spaces, and I respectfully address that. I respectfully address that. There is a difference. There's two different things. There are women based on biological sex.
I would argue there's a third thing, actually, which is that someone who is or was the Home Secretary, who was in charge of the Home Office, wanted that flag taken down and said she couldn't have it taken down because of a combination of civil servants and people within her own party. Do you not think that's a little bit weird? She's in charge. She's the gaffer.
Yeah, well, that's up to her party and the Home Office officials to determine. That's up to them.
Who's in charge here, though? I mean, who's in charge?
But by proposing to take down that flag, that would be seen as an attack and a threat against the LGBT plus community.
So there you go. It's taking that flag down. This is it, isn't it? Once that flag goes up, the second you want to take that down, you're what, some kind of homophobic transphobe, are you?
Well, I would like to ask, Peter, what has happened to institutional neutrality, particularly that of the public sector? I mean, which is, a hugely important principle to give confidence of members of the public in the public sector. I mean, in Pride Month, we've seen doctors wearing pride badges, state schools hoisting the pride flag. We've seen fire and rescue services marching alongside men dressed in fetish gear at the pride marches. We've seen people being cancelled from their jobs because they dared say that men cannot become women.
But hang on, the government celebrates Diwali, the Hindu festival. The government celebrates Black History Month. The government celebrates commemorates the suffragettes and women's struggles. This is not one thing. It's not just about LGBT. It's rightly that the government celebrates all the diverse sections of our society, and I think that's fantastic.
I get that, but we are literally coming straight off the back of a time. We've had D-Day, and we did not have a Union Jack up on Regent Street, and our Prime Minister left that commemoration early so he could go and interview by the bloke.
Well, we should have. I agree, we should have.
By the bloke who did the whole Partygate scandal for ITV. I mean, good grief, we are where we are.
Yeah, I agree, we should have celebrated D-Day.
All right, thank you very, very much, both of you. Lovely stuff. All right, who do you agree with? Did Suella Braverman go too far with her comments? Excuse me. Condemning the progress flag. Rita, on your say, says, Suella is absolutely correct. I wish more of these politicians would grow some and follow her lead. Right. Shannara on X says, yes, Suella went too far. Trans people are constantly being targeted and it's time it stopped. Danny says, she's right. If the Conservatives had listened to her the first time she told the truth over these hate marches, they wouldn't have suffered such a humiliating defeat. Right, let's see what your verdict is. 10% of you think that Suella Braverman went too far on the comments and 90% of you said that she didn't. Right, look, coming up, as Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, she says he's on the left of the Tory party. Will another civil war in the party actually do them any good? Plus, as this man makes his debut speech in Parliament.
And it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you.
Should the Tories stop smearing reform voters, as Suella has suggested? Political commentator Theo Usherwood tackles that, and also, as well, I should just say, a story that's just broken about Kemi Badenoch apparently absolutely teeing off at the Tory Shadow Cabinet meeting, so I'll give you the full details of that. But next, well, it's all kicking off again, isn't it, amongst the Tories, because have they just conducted a bent election to appoint a new chair of the 1922 committee? Brexit Spartan Mark Francois is apparently absolutely furious, and I'm pleased to say he's live in the studio, and that's next.
Hello, welcome back to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Cloudy and damp in the north during the next 24 hours. Drier further south, still with some showers, however, and it's going to stay humid across southern parts of the UK, with humid air from the continent extending across many parts. But that means also a lot of cloud cover, continued risk of thunderstorms for the evening across East Wales into the Midlands and North West England before they ease overnight, and continued outbreaks of persistent rain for many other parts across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, although it stays cloudy overnight, it will be drier and it will be a mild night. Muggy in some spots, 15 or 16 Celsius during the start of the day. But for northern Scotland, where it's increasingly damp, especially the northeast, across parts of Aberdeenshire, that rain driving in on a brisk northeasterly breeze. Likewise, outbreaks of, at times, heavy rain continue across the central belt, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. But for England and Wales, it's drier, although not entirely dry as we start off Wednesday. A lot of low cloud around and some showers here and there. Now, those showers will increasingly move east and north through the morning. Brighter skies develop across southern England and South Wales, and it's going to be warm when the sun comes through, with temperatures reaching 23, 24 Celsius. Not feeling so warm across northeast Scotland, where that rain continues to pile up. And there is the risk of localised flooding with that rain, particularly across parts of Aberdeenshire into the Grampians, 50 to 80 millimetres in places. It's still there for the start of Thursday, albeit easing and pushing into the North Sea. Elsewhere across the UK, Thursday begins with, once again, a lot of cloud cover, but that cloud will break through during the day. Some showers will develop, but all in all, a drier day for many. Friday, likewise, a mix of bright spells and showers, and similar into the weekend.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. Now, in the last hour, the Tory MP Bob Blackman has been elected as the new chair of the all-powerful 1922 committee, which will oversee the impending Conservative leadership contest. OK, so it's quite a big deal, this. But the selection was marred in chaos after voting reportedly closed earlier than expected. Well, I'm joined now by the Tory MP Mark Francois, the so-called leader of the five families. And Mark, you have been absolutely fizzing about this. Can you explain to our viewers and listeners, firstly, what happened, and secondly, why this matters?
I'll do it in reverse order, if I may.
All right, do whatever you want.
The 1922 committee oversee the rules for the election of a Conservative leader. They can change those rules. So particularly in the current situation, the chairmanship of the 22 is a very powerful position. We had an election today for the chairman. A lot of Tory MPs were uncomfortable that it was being done in such a mad rush. We've only just got back from a gruelling 6-week campaign. Anyway, they insisted we go ahead today. I've got a text here from the Whip's office yesterday saying the polls would be open from 5 to 6. I've got here an email from Bob Blackman, who was, he says, elected, confirming that the polls will be open from 5 to 6.
Yes, this is 5 till 6 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, think of that as like the polling card that people get to go to the polling stations in a general election. We just had one, right? I got there at 5:45 and I was told the polls had closed because someone had sent out a WhatsApp message about an hour earlier saying, no, the polls are closing at 5:30. A lot of people never saw that. And besides, the timings had already been set. So Edward Lee, the father of the House, the man who, helped re-elect the Speaker today, walked in behind me. And Graham Brady, the outgoing chairman, said, sorry, you're too late. And Edward pulled his phone out of his pocket and showed him the email from the Whip's office, the text from yesterday, saying, but it's 5 to 6. So to continue my analogy, we've just had a general election. Mrs Bloggs goes to the polling station with her polling card, and the presiding officer says, I'm sorry, Mrs Bloggs, you can't vote. Didn't you get the WhatsApp message? We closed the polls an hour ago.
So you're saying that you now need to rerun this election?
Saw Bob Blackman earlier this evening, and I said, you must rerun this. There were 23 out of 121 Tory MPs who didn't vote. The Shadow Chancellor didn't get to vote. Julian Smith didn't get to vote, right? I mean, it's a really serious matter, but you've got a bunch of senior Tory MPs who can't run an election.
Well,
we cannot have the man that presides over the rules for electing a new Tory leader elected in an election which had a major irregularity.
So, but what's the fear then, Mark? Because, you know, so you talk about they set the rules for this new Tory leadership election. What's the fear? I mean, Bob Blackman, he's a Brexiteer, isn't he? I thought, is he not be right up your street? Is that right?
Look, these people have the power to change the rules. They changed the rules last time. They said you had to get 100 nominations or you couldn't stand for the leadership, right? They could change them again. I'm not saying that they've done this to favour candidate A over candidate B, but these people have real power, and the chairman has been elected in an election where the polls closed earlier than people were told they could go and vote. I was disenfranchised. So was the Father of the House. So was the Shadow Chancellor. We've got to do this again and do it correctly. You can't start our parliamentary year in opposition with an election that was chaotic.
I do have to put this to you, which is that maybe it's this kind of complete and utter mess which is the reason why Labour won a landslide.
I'm not going to disagree with you. You know, the decision to call the election when we did was mad. It was taken by 6 people in the bunker. It was the whole of the party, MPs, the voluntary party, most of central office, were expecting an autumn election. We thought it might be on the same day as the locals in May. Then we were told stand down. Then we were told you can book your summer holidays. And bang, out of nowhere, we're thrown into a general election. The voluntary party, our voluntary party members, right, have slogged their guts out for 6 weeks to get some of us back into Parliament, and they'll be watching this tonight going, what the blooming hell is going on?
And you worry, do you, reading between the lines, that there might be a decision made to take the vote for the next Conservative Party leader out of members' hands?
Look, I am utterly opposed to that. There are some MPs who are advocating that. Well, that's what we did last time, and look what happened to that. We've had 2 so-called coronations in recent years where the MPs eventually took the final decision. One was Theresa May, the other was Rishi Sunak. So no more coronations, thank you. Our voluntary party members have been to hell and back over the last 6 weeks. It's been the most difficult election I've ever been involved in. They got sworn out too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they have a right to pick our new leader. But still, not Bob Blackman, to be fair, but still some of our colleagues are trying to say in private, oh, no, the grown-ups must take the MPs know bet. Really? They couldn't even run an election?
But just to be clear, as where we stand today, Bob Blackman is the chair of the 1922 committee.
Not in my eyes.
But you don't recognise that?
Not in my name.
Right.
If they want this to be legitimate, they have to redo it. If this was a general election and there was a problem like this, or if you'd had a parliamentary by-election and there'd been a problem over when the polls closed, you'd rerun it, right? Not in my name, right? We cannot have a committee that can set the rules for a leadership election chaired by a man who was elected in an election that had a major irregularity in it. We just can't do it. It's not credible.
All right. Mark, thank you very much for coming in tonight. Great to have you on the show. And we'll obviously be following this one very closely. So thank you very much. It's Mark Francois there. Well, what do you make of that, eh? Coming up, though, we take a little closer look at our new minister. There's 2 of them, by the way, but this one, a minister for women.
Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean,
neither of your 2 new ministers for women can tell you what a woman is. But next, Keir Starmer's hero makes a worrying admission.
We, as a country, Britain, are going to become much poorer.
Great. We'll get stuck into that next with top political commentator Theo Usherwood, and we'll analyse Kemi Badenoch tearing into Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman as well. Stay tuned.
Good Afternoon Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Now, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helped people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
Where does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless, and even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back. So coming up, has Keir Starmer made a massive mistake by appointing Annalise Dodds as one of the new ministers for women when she doesn't seem to know what a woman is? But before that, the first shadow cabinet meeting between the Tories took place today. And let's just say, things got heated. So in an astonishing leaked memo to The Times, it's emerged that Kemi Badenoch ripped into Rishi Sunak over election blunders, his decision to leave D-Day early. The Shadow Housing Secretary, who's seen as a front-runner now for the Tory leadership contest, also said that colleagues like Penny Mordaunt would still be MPs today if he'd stayed in France longer. She also said that Suella Braverman appeared to be having a very public nervous breakdown. And finally, she emphasised that Shadow Cabinet discussions should not be leaked. Well, that went well, didn't it? I'm joined now by former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood. Theo, so it's kicked off.
Yes, it has kicked off. It's an extraordinary leaking, and of course it seems to be that Kemi Badenoch is now running the Conservative Party. She's taken over from Rishi Sunak de facto, going by this shadow cabinet meeting, saying that Craig Williams, who of course was the PPS, Rishi Sunak caught up in that betting scandal, was described him as behaving like a buffoon, and then of course taking aim at Rishi Sunak. I mean, he must have wondered why he'd hang around, because leaving the D-Day commemorations early is disastrous, and then of course going on to criticise the enormity of what had happened with that election defeat. I think there's a serious point to be made here that actually, and also I just point out what she said about Suella Braverman having a very public nervous breakdown, is that there may be just a very simple opportunity for the Conservative Party just to forget having a conversation, forget having a talking about the direction the party's going to be in, clearly looking at the way that Gibby Badenoch has steamrolled the opposition, that actually she's the best person for the job to take on Keir Starmer. That seems to be the view amongst many of the Conservatives I've spoken to. And actually, the problem potentially the Conservatives have got is that they allow Labour now to set the narrative, to pin all of the difficult decisions that they're going to be taking over the next year or so on the fact that they need to clear up the mess left by their Conservative predecessors, whether it's Boris Johnson and the pandemic or Liz Truss crashing the economy. You can have a debate about both, but actually, if Labour set this narrative, and they've already talked about this £58 billion of the cost of the chaos of the Conservatives. But if over the course of the summer they set that narrative so that in 5 years' time the Tories go to the electorate and say, please vote for us again, well, they'll have it in their minds, just etched in their minds, that the Tories messed it up over 14 years. I remember it was the 2017 general election. When I was political editor, I often got DMs from callers and listeners at LBC. And I remember people were still messaging me going, I really like Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto, but can I trust Labour with the economy? This is 7 years after Cameron and Osborne took over from Gordon Brown. And you can even make the case that Gordon Brown didn't actually crash the economy. It was to do with the subprime market in America. And the Tories mustn't allow that to happen, because if they spend the next 6 months fighting away, then what they're going to do is they're going to make it much more difficult at the next election, because Labour are just going to set the tone that everything that they're having to sort out is down to them.
So for you, you're hearing that Kemi Badenoch is, amongst Conservative MPs, the frontrunner?
Well, it's certainly with the members. And I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and it was a Tory event, and everybody was talking about Kemi, and she was touring the tables, and she was speaking to the strategists, and it was very much along the lines that, you know, this is who we should get to take over the party. And why have a protracted knife fight amongst Conservative MPs? Why go through that process? What the Tories need to do right now is they need to concentrate on Labour, because if the Labour set the tone, it's going to be much harder further down the line.
Well, just on that, let's whiz it on a bit to Labour, because now, you know, everything technically is their problem. They are in charge. So we've got a clip of former Labour Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair, sounded the alarm on Sir Keir Starmer's plan to turbocharge growth, warning that it might not be enough.
The simple and unavoidable truth is that unless we improve growth and productivity and drive value and efficiency through our public services, we as a country, Britain, are going to become much poorer.
Yeah, so it coincided with a report from the Tony Blair Institute that said that, you know, taxes might have to go up by a whopping £50 billion without a change in approach. Yeah, I mean, is it time, do you think, that Labour came clean about our taxes?
I think for Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, it must be really irritating Tony Blair coming in. He's now second intervention. Firstly, he was talking about digital ID cards to sort out the immigration crisis. Now he's saying that Labour's sums, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer's sums, don't add up and they're going to have to find more taxes. I think what's also interesting is that during the course of the campaign, and this was a major attack line from the Conservatives, was that Labour hadn't owned up to potentially having to increase taxes to fill what is a sizable black hole at 20 billion at least, in terms of cuts coming down the track in the next couple of years to unprotected departments. So Tony Blair now intervening and saying, you know, from the Labour side, saying you're going to have to put up taxes, that's going to sting, that's going to hurt Number 10. You know, Tony Blair had his time in office, he was a very successful Labour Prime Minister, and I think people would just rather now, you know, he's got a very successful company to run. He should run that company and just let Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, you know, run the country.
Just quickly on this, we are a bit pressed for time now, but we're not going to get a refund from Rwanda, are we? That's the latest.
No, we're not going to get a refund from Rwanda. And of course, you know, it's already cost, well, up until April, it cost £240 million. I mean, the Rwandans must be delighted by that decision, because they've done nothing.
Well, we've defrauded ourselves, haven't we, really?
Yeah, but you know, I guess Keir Starmer can try and make the argument it was never going to happen because it would take so much time in the courts, that it was a gimmick, that actually it wasn't dealing with the problem. But I do think that they're going to have to show that they've got this issue in hand. I think you can only go so far of trying to not talk about the immigration crisis. if in 5 years' time the boats are still coming here, we're already paying £6 million a day for hotels, then I think that's going to be problematic. And if you look at the changes that Labour have made, they're minute, and actually their plans at the moment are exactly the same pretty much as what the Tories were doing, minus Rwanda.
But plus the cost.
Plus the cost.
This is it, because that was the argument, wasn't it? Well, we're wasting a load of money. Well, we haven't.
It's gone. It's gone. It's down the drain. And I guess, I don't know if they drink champagne in Kigali, but if they do drink champagne in Kigali, I'm sure they're having a glass of it.
They can certainly afford to, can't they? Now, look, Theo, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, my good man. Take care, and I'll see you again very, very soon. That is the wonderful Theo Usherwood there. Now, coming up, we've got a lot more to get stuck into, because J.K. Rowling has hit out with Annalise Dodds. She was made Minister for Women, believe it or not.
Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean,
she's not the only one. There's now 2 Minister for Women, and neither of them can tell you what a woman is. Are women safe under Labour? That's what I want to know, and I'm going to be whizzing through a couple of their policies that I think may shock you, if indeed you are a woman, or maybe you just care about them. It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome back to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Cloudy and damp in the north during the next 24 hours. Drier further south, still with some showers, however, and it's going to stay humid across southern parts of the UK, with humid air from the continent extending across many parts. But that means also a lot of cloud cover, continued risk of thunderstorms for the evening across East Wales into the Midlands and North West England before they ease overnight, and continued outbreaks of persistent rain for many other parts across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, although it stays cloudy overnight, it will be drier and it will be a mild night. Muggy in some spots, 15 or 16 Celsius during the start of the day. But for northern Scotland, where it's increasingly damp, especially the northeast, across parts of Aberdeenshire, that rain driving in on a brisk northeasterly breeze. Likewise, outbreaks of, at times, heavy rain continue across the central belt, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. But for England and Wales, it's drier, although not entirely dry as we start off Wednesday. A lot of low cloud around and some showers here and there. Now, those showers will increasingly move east and north through the morning. Brighter skies develop across southern England and South Wales, and it's going to be warm when the sun comes through, with temperatures reaching 23, 24 Celsius. Not feeling so warm across northeast Scotland, where that rain continues to pile up. And there is the risk of localised flooding with that rain, particularly across parts of Aberdeenshire into the Grampians, 50 to 80 millimetres in places. It's still there for the start of Thursday, albeit easing and pushing into the North Sea. Elsewhere across the UK, Thursday begins with, once again, a lot of cloud cover, but that cloud will break through during the day. Some showers will develop, but all in all, a drier day for many. Friday, likewise, a mix of bright spells and showers, and similar into the weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
Labour's definition of a woman.
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean,
both of Labour's new ministers for women don't know what a woman is. That bodes well for these ladies.
Only the individual and one female behind the locked door of the changing room, and, you know, girls have reported feeling really panicked by that.
Also on the way, illegal immigrants are now openly smoking cannabis in detention centres. Plus, this child sex abuser will be one of the very first people released early under this Labour government. He was a member of a grooming gang. Also,
and it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you.
Nigel Farage gets stuck straight into John Bercow in the Commons. Meanwhile,
that I was a member of a government that presided over the mutilation of our children in our hospitals and from our schools.
Could Suella Braverman defect to Reform? And the Joe Biden saga gets more ridiculous.
What was that weird face you were making when Trump was talking? You know the face.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
I've also got a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and to do that with me tonight is broadcaster and columnist Esther Krakow, director of the Centre for Immigration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and author Amy Nicole Turner. Oh yes, and why has Keir Starmer angered some Muslims?
Do you accept that there's a problem with the relationship between the Labour Party and British Muslims at the moment?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. If you don't know what a woman is, you shouldn't be in Parliament. Next.
Good evening. The latest news this hour. Sir Keir Starmer is on his way to a NATO summit in Washington tonight, saying he remains committed to increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP and will do so following a review of defence strategy as well as Britain's defence capabilities.
My message is very, very clear that this NATO summit is an opportunity for allies to stand together, to strengthen their resolve, particularly in light of that appalling attack against Russian aggression. I'm pleased to have the early opportunity to affirm and reaffirm Labour's strong support, unshakable support for NATO. We're a founding member. It's now the 75th anniversary. But this is an opportunity to send that message in relation to Russian aggression wherever. But that attack last week was appalling, and so the message is even more important now than it was before.
Well, earlier on today, MPs were sworn in as Labour ministers sat on the government front benches for the first time in 14 years. The new session of Parliament, of course, underway today, 643 MPs gathering ahead of Parliament's official state opening slated for next week. Sir Keir Starmer speaking for the first time at the dispatch box as Prime Minister.
Now, as in any new Parliament, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed, and to replace that politics of performance with the politics of service. Because service is a precondition for hope and trust, and the need to restore trust should weigh heavily on every member here, new and returning alike. We all have a duty to show that politics can be a force for good. So whatever our political differences, it's now time to turn the page, unite in a common endeavour of national renewal, and make this new Parliament a Parliament of service.
Well, in response to that, Rishi Sunak, now the leader of the opposition, wished Sir Keir Starmer the best.
Can I start by congratulating the Prime Minister on his election victory, and as he takes on his formidable task, he and his family deserve the good wishes of all of us in this House. Now, in our politics, we can argue vigorously, as the Prime Minister and I did over the past 6 weeks, but still respect each other. And whatever disputes we may have in this Parliament, I know that everyone in this House will not lose sight of the fact that we are all motivated by our desire to serve our constituents, our country, and advance the principles that we honourably believe in.
Rishi Sunak. Well, the former Labour Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair, is urging the new Labour government to embrace the use of technology. Speaking at his Future of Britain conference in London, the former Prime Minister said AI and digital ID could boost growth for the country and generate savings. And he also warned the country would become much poorer unless we increase value and efficiency through public spending.
Breakthrough represented by generative AI, there is going to be another revolution on top of this existing one. The opportunities are huge. The risks are huge. But there is absolutely no doubt that this is an era of transformation.
Thames Water says it's going to run out of money by the end of next May unless it can get further funding. Britain's biggest water firm, which is in debt by more than £15 billion, has just £1.8 billion in cash reserves in the bank. It needs to fund new projects and maintain and update infrastructure after investors pulled the plug on £500 million of emergency cash early this year. It could leave the new Labour government with a difficult decision now over whether or not to nationalise it, something Labour has said it does not want to do. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The Labour Party's new Minister for Women and Equalities doesn't know what a woman is. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Both of Labour's new Ministers for Women and Equalities don't know what a woman is. Annalise Dodds was asked about it on Woman's Hour on International Women's Day. Here's what she said.
Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. Well, I think with respect, Emma, I think it does depend what the context is.
And here's Bridget Phillipson now as well.
Trans woman with a penis would use which lavatory?
Well, look, I think it's important that all people feel safe and have dignity and
But she needs to go to the lavatory. Which one does she use?
But I think there are a range of options that would...
Well, she hasn't got a range of options, respectfully. She's got a door with a woman on it. She's got a door with a bloke on it. Which one does she go in, Bridget Phillipson?
I would want people to treat one another with respect.
She needs to use the lavatory, Shadow Secretary of State. Which one is she to use?
This shouldn't be a massive shock because the rot starts from the top, doesn't it? Here's the Labour leader and Chancellor's attempt to define a woman.
A woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know...
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No, it's just... No, I just... For the vast majority of women, this is all about biology, and of course they don't have a penis. We all know that.
Is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
So Annalise Dodds is one of that triumphant double act of hardcore feminists running the show for women now. She wants to make it easier for people to change gender. So this means more blokes in women's changing rooms. She wants to allow a single doctor to sign off on it instead of having a panel of doctors and lawyers. Just to be clear, we already have situations like this.
There's only the individual and one female behind the locked door of the changing room, and, you know, girls have reported feeling really panicked. I go in there and I can't wait to get out and get home at the end of my shift.
They are NHS nurses, OK? And that's what they are being confronted by, a bloke with full tackle in their changing room. Our new Health Secretary is Wes Streeting, who has miraculously today managed to have some kind of breakthrough, OK, with the definitely non-political junior doctors who've been striking every other week. But he's flip-flopped on what a woman is as well.
If you'd asked me a few years ago on this topic, I would have said trans men are men, trans women are women, some people are trans, get over it, let's move on, this is all blown out of proportion. And now I sort of sit and reflect and think, actually, there are lots of complexities and challenges.
Isn't that the problem, that leading...
Right, so how's he going to sort that problem out? J.K. Rowling has accused Labour of abandoning the campaign for women's rights. Well, look, having a Labour leader, a Chancellor, a Health Secretary and 2 Ministers for Women and Equalities who do not appear to know what a woman is, you do have to ask, don't you, are women safe under a Labour government? Let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. I've got columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow. I've also got the director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and author Amy Nicole Turner. Esther, I'll start with you on this. Are women safe under Labour, do you think?
Well, that depends on what a woman is. Because apparently there are many definitions. Some women were hatched, some women were dug up, some women have 6 testicles, some women have no breasts. I mean, it's a pick and mix, really. Women, who knows? Who knows? Look, I think the gaffe here isn't, oh, they can't define a woman is. That's not the real controversy. The controversy is they know what a woman is. Keir Starmer, who is married to a woman, who has produced 2 children, by the biology of being with a woman, knows what a woman is. It's the cowardice that has infected our political classes that is making them refuse to say what it is. Because if they do, then they have to draw a line in the sand and say, actually, women should have their own spaces for changing. For instance, women should have women-only shelters, for example. Women shouldn't have to feel like they need to compete with biological men in sports. But they don't want to do that, and that's the real issue. It's the cowardice in our politics.
I mean, 2 ministers now, 2 for women and equalities, neither of whom feel comfortable telling any of us what a woman is.
But they did. They answered the question. They answered the question correctly. They said it depends on context. So, yeah, you might need to declare what biologically you were assigned at birth if you're in a medical setting. But when you go to the wedding registry, it's obviously what you self-ID. What sense would it make for a trans woman to be referred to as a man when she gets married?
Well, I don't know, maybe
that's ridiculous. But yeah, it might, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. In a medical setting, it is context. It is context. They're doing a good job answering that question.
But the problem is, in a medical setting at the moment, as it currently stands, we've got NHS nurses, female, being threatened with the sack for calling out a bloke with full genitalia in their changing rooms. That bloke, by the way, is currently trying to get his own girlfriend pregnant.
I think that...
And talks to NHS nurses about that, and they just have to suck it up.
Can I just say that you always get wound up about the accessibility of a gender recognition certificate. Gender recognition certificates would deal with this problem quite well, because I very much doubt that man in that changing room has a gender recognition certificate.
Oh, that's what it is.
Because you think it's about changing room.
Validity of people's whatever gender they feel like in the hands of random doctors.
It's not whatever you feel like, is it? Why would you want your birth certificate, your death certificate, your wedding certificate to all be inaccurate so you can bust in a women's changing room?
We are going to just let Stephen have a word.
As the 3rd woman on this table at the moment, I just think that Annalise is quite right, that just for the next 5 minutes, I'm a woman. And after those 5 minutes, when I go through that door, I'm going to be back at a man.
How do you know?
That is the point.
What's your
that
name,
comes
Stephanie?
down. Oh, I'm Stephanie for the next 5 minutes because Annalise is so right.
All right.
This is the kind of laughable, ridiculous aspect about it. It's almost as though I'm in some sort of fantasy movie from there where these people will not accept the biological reality and then
relevant for all people.
Of course it's relevant.
Well, you're not going to. Are
It's relevant because we're not trying to be unkind to people. We're simply saying that if we now have a third group of individuals, then we have a third changing room. We have third toilets. We have third sports rights. You cannot define yourself because you've got a penis as being a woman just because you simply say it. That's why I'm a woman now. And when I walk through the door,
you're fundamentally misunderstanding what a trans identity is. And if you're the minister for women,
I care about 51% of the population who are women who do not feel that they're being respected by this.
Can I interject here on this, which is that I think that I take at face value what you're saying, right? But I think one of the big problems is that what this doesn't account for is that people who are deviants, who want to identify as a woman so that they can have access to women's spaces. And that's a problem.
They will not qualify for a gender recognition certificate. In all the places where self-ID has been enacted, like Canada, Ireland, there is a case-by-case basis, so your fraudulent claims will be weeded out. You will not get... Because when they put
Are you saying
forward...
there's never any issues in Canadian prisons? Of course there have been issues in Canadian prisons about this.
But that would be a mismanagement of the prison system. The prison system is functioning as it should.
Not the male rapist they put in there.
If we go back to that Isla Bryson example, that famous Isla Bryson example, that individual should never have been in that prison. That women,
but they got into a mess with it, though, didn't they? And this is the point.
Did.
They got into a mess with it because they felt unable to define what a woman is. And that's where we are
Isla Bryson did not have
two ministers for women who can't do that.
Can I just point out, I don't actually think there should be a ministry for women at all. I don't think... I think these are the kinds of gimmicks that create needless sort of debates and quarrels and say, oh, you need to dedicate these resources for women's issues, but dedicate these resources for men's issues.
I think we need to move on from that anyway.
I don't agree with that. However, it has brought up the important question of if you're going to have a ministry for women, it's utterly ridiculous that you have ministers that are refusing to define what a woman is.
But to me, it's ridiculous to have a minister for equalities and women who would not include trans women in women. If you're going to talk about women, you are talking about trans women as well.
Men. They have penises. They have XY chromosomes.
That's reminiscent of when Margaret Thatcher said that homosexuals were a pretend family setup. You're basically saying trans women are pretend women, and I think that is...
They are pretend women.
But see...
There's nothing that makes a man a woman.
And that's why I think you're misunderstanding trans identities, and maybe...
To be honest, I don't lose sleep over trans identity. I want everyone to live respected, fine, but I don't want to live in delusion, and I certainly don't want it to be forced upon me. I don't care what you identify as. You can identify as a fox, a chicken, whatever. The point is, we should draw a line in the sand when it comes to legality. I don't care what you identify as. Please identify as whatever your heart.
Well, then people deserve to have legal rights
that
reflect.
Well, they can have legal rights. They can vote, they can live in homes, they can have bank accounts. They just can define themselves as a biological woman.
There are real world issues at play, right? And if you go and speak to the numerous different sets of NHS nurses now who are having biological men in their changing rooms and they feel as though they are being leered at when they're in there and that there is something going on, and then when they raise that with their line managers or HR departments, they are threatened with the sack. That is, unfortunately, a real-world issue that is happening right now. And when you look at, on paper, the people right throughout the top of the Labour Party, it does beg the question, well, what's going to be done about
that? But that is not the problem of trans people. That is the problem of cis men. Cis men are still the ones causing the problems. There are risks to cis women, there are risks to trans women. You cannot park that problem of those nurses at the door of trans people just trying to have equal rights to women.
It's the politicians who need to stand up to that, isn't it, and stop it.
But I think
that's my point.
But I think reforming the gender recognition certificate will put that in motion.
Politics of being confident and honest. They're not being honest on this issue.
OK. All right, OK. Well, look, a lively start. And I have got, well, another quite deeply concerning story coming your way, actually. I will also have tomorrow's front pages. And I'm also going to be showing you Nigel Farage's first speech in Parliament. I've got a little clip of that now.
And it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you.
OK, so we gave disgraced former Speaker John Bercow both barrels, so stay tuned for that. But next, this is a big one. I'll bring you a shocking exclusive that puts Labour's plans to release 40,000 prisoners early into a terrifying perspective. Former Greater Manchester Police detective and founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation, Maggie Oliver, is going to be here live reacting to it. It's astonishing that a member of a grooming gang could be one of the first people released under this Labour government early. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We are on GB News. Now, as we reported yesterday, new Prime Minister Keir Starmer is drawing up plans to release prisoners when they've served just 40% of their sentence. But what might this look like when it's actually put into practice? Well, GB News can exclusively reveal tonight that a vile ringleader of a Rotherham child sex abuse gang will be freed after serving just 7 years of a 13-year sentence. Paedophile Matloob Hussain was jailed in February 2017, but now he's been referred for release by the parole board, meaning he is likely to be back out on the streets in a matter of days. Hussain was found guilty of sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 13. He was 42 years old when he was convicted. I'm joined now by former detective constable and whistleblower in the Rochdale grooming scandal. It's Maggie Oliver. Maggie, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Great to have you on the show. How do you feel about this particular person getting early release?
It makes me really angry, Patrick. I think what I would point out, though, is that this is not an isolated case. The norm within the criminal justice system is that if a paedophile or a child rapist is jailed for 20 years, they will serve 10. If they're jailed for or sentenced to 14 years, they will serve 7. And that actually runs throughout the whole criminal justice system for all kinds of offences. So the problem is that the system on so many levels isn't fit for purpose. And the voices of the victims in all of these cases remains silent. You know, the victim of this man, of these paedophiles in this case, will not have been consulted about whether this man is released. It is very much a routine thing. And he will go back to Rotherham, probably. He will be allowed to live with his family. He will be allowed to go in the local supermarket. And there is every chance that he will bump into the child that he raped when she was 13. And I have seen that repeatedly. Even in the Rochdale case, I've spoken about it on your show before, Patrick, that young Ruby, you know, she was made pregnant when she was just 13. She didn't know her rapist, who was 40-odd years old, was released after about 4 years. She went in the local Asda, walked round the end of an aisle and came face to face with her rapist. Didn't even know he was out of prison. So this case is not unusual. It's the whole system that needs a complete overhaul. You know, it shocks me and it makes me angry.
Yeah, indeed. And the solution, presumably for you, is not to continue with this issue of allowing people out early.
Yeah.
Presumably it's to what? Build more prison spaces and keep them locked up for longer?
Build prisons. Keep them in prison. They are not fit to be, they're not safe to release into the community. And I have to question the criminal justice system from start to finish in the UK. If this man, I mean, it could be any man who has carried out these crimes, if he was convicted in America or in Germany, he would be in prison for 25 years. You know, this is not even a slap on the wrist. It doesn't send out the right message that these crimes are life-destroying. The child who has been abused will be affected for the rest of her life by what's happened to her. This man will walk out. The whole system, you know, gathers around him. The parole board have allowed him to come out. And why? Because we don't have enough prison places, because it, you know, a sentence isn't what it is. You know, as I've just said, you know, 20 years is 10. There are so many things that are wrong with the system, but every time it's victims that are trampled all over. They don't have a voice.
Now, this has been allowed to happen. This whole setup has been allowed to happen under a Conservative government for the last 14 years. And there is absolutely no getting away from that. We are where we are now. But we have a Labour government in now, and it appears that they are having some kind of new policy where there's going to be more people released after serving 40% of their sentence. When you look at individual cases like this, from your understanding of how the system works, you know, can a Justice Minister stop people like this being released?
I believe where there's a will, there's a way. This is all about prioritising resources. You know, do we think that abusing a young child is a crime that's worthy of a long prison sentence? I do. You know, we have to prioritise and we have to choose where we spend our country's money. For me, we need a criminal justice system that is fit for purpose. It needs investment. It needs commitment. We need to care about these children, and we need to stop these horrendous crimes from happening. And at the moment, the message that goes out is that out of, you know, so many who are abusing children, the chances of being caught are remote, when we know that less than 2 in every 100 reported rapes leads to a trial. You know, what kind of a deterrent is that? And if of those 2, they're convicted to 15 years in prison and they're out in 7, you know, it's worth the risk, because most of them get away with it. The ones that don't serve a short sentence and then they're back in their community as though they've done nothing wrong, whereas the victims suffer with the trauma of their abuse for the rest of their lives. So it makes me really angry. And I look, you know, I'm not a party political person, Patrick. This is successive governments that are failing not only our children, but they're failing the public.
Yeah. I mean, the message that this sends for somebody who is that way inclined is, you can do probably up there with the most unspeakable crimes that most people could think of, and within a few years you can be back out, like you said there. And it always amazes me, by the way, how many of their own families seem to just let them come back and live in the family home. I mean, good grief. Can you imagine if that was someone we knew? They'd be nowhere near us, would they? But Maggie, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, and much appreciated. And unfortunately, it looks as though we probably will end up talking about this again, Maggie. But take care. I'll see you soon. That's Maggie Oliver there, who, of course, was the whistleblower in the Rochdale grooming gang scandal, former detective constable at Greater Manchester Police. Right, OK, look, loads more coming your way, including... Can Joe Biden actually survive this relentless ridicule and make it to the White House again?
What was that weird face you were making when Trump was talking? You know the face.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
But next, after several Muslim candidates were accused of intimidating their election opponents, is Labour backbencher Upsana Begum right to call out Keir Starmer for this response to falling trust in the Muslim community?
Do you accept that there's a problem with the relationship between the Labour Party and British Muslims at the moment?
I will play his response shortly. We'll tackle that next and deliver the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages as well, so stay tuned.
Hello, welcome back to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Cloudy and damp in the north during the next 24 hours. Drier further south, still with some showers, however, and it's going to stay humid across southern parts of the UK, with humid air from the continent extending across many parts. But that means also a lot of cloud cover, continued risk of thunderstorms for the evening across East Wales into the Midlands and North West England before they ease overnight, and continued outbreaks of persistent rain for many other parts across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, although it stays cloudy overnight, it will be drier and it will be a mild night. Muggy in some spots, 15 or 16 Celsius during the start of the day. But for northern Scotland, where it's increasingly damp, especially the northeast, across parts of Aberdeenshire, that rain driving in on a brisk northeasterly breeze. Likewise, outbreaks of, at times, heavy rain continue across the central belt, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. But for England and Wales, it's drier, although not entirely dry as we start off Wednesday. A lot of low cloud around and some showers here and there. Now, those showers will increasingly move east and north through the morning. Brighter skies develop across southern England and South Wales, and it's going to be warm when the sun comes through, with temperatures reaching 23, 24 Celsius. Not feeling so warm across northeast Scotland, where that rain continues to pile up. And there is the risk of localised flooding with that rain, particularly across parts of Aberdeenshire into the Grampians, 50 to 80 millimetres in places. It's still there for the start of Thursday, albeit easing and pushing into the North Sea. Elsewhere across the UK, Thursday begins with, once again, a lot of cloud cover, but that cloud will break through during the day. Some showers will develop, but all in all, a drier day for many. Friday, likewise, a mix of bright spells and showers, and similar into the weekend.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got a first look at tomorrow's front pages for you. Here we go. We're going to start with the Metro. It's now or never. Yeah, they're going off on the England game. So there we go. We'll go to the Daily Star. Your country needs you to really, really go for it. That's a picture of Harry Kane there, again, about the football. We're going to go now to The Guardian. Starmer calls on NATO to raise defence spending. Now, this is an interesting story. Keir Starmer will today, so this is tomorrow, we're in the past here now, is going to call on NATO countries to increase defence spending, all right? He's going to use the 75th anniversary summit in Washington, his first international trip as Prime Minister, to underline Britain's cast-iron commitment to the defence alliance. If we go to The Independent, there's the same story here. Starmer flies into NATO summit and defence budget flag. So he's repeating his, quote, iron manifesto commitment to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, right? But he's not saying when he's going to do it. And this is what they're hammering him for now, as they are on The Times. They're saying Starmer is playing fire on defence spending. Again, it is this issue now of him apparently saying, well, you know, talking tough on the world stage, basically, saying, you know, look, we need to do this. We need to. It's a time of heightened international aggression, and then everyone's saying, all right, Keir, but when are you actually going to do this? And Stephen, I wonder what your views are on this. Just on The Times, I wonder what your view is on this.
I think he's just there saying one thing that he's got in his manifesto commitments. He wants to be able to look tough on the stage. He wants to look like a proper professional politician and leader of the free world, be friendly to America and say all the right things, because that's what he's doing. Says all the right things about immigration, even though he's not going to do anything.
Well, give him a chance.
All the right things on keeping people out of prison, and he's going to release 40,000.
Well,
he's going to say all the right things. But when it comes down to it, he knows that we're an impoverished nation, that we've got very little money out there, and somehow to start increasing that budget means that we have to pay for it. And that'll put pressure on Rachel Reeves. And the argument, what we heard from Tony Blair, that potentially they've got to have £50 billion. Well,
I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail on this. So Philip Ingram, a former colonel in the British military intelligence, saying Starmer's playing with fire because it will take years to fix the army, our ammunition stocks, and get the RAF and Navy ready. Lord West of Spithead, a former head of the Navy, who was a security minister under the previous Labour government, said Labour should outline a timeline during the summit to set an example to all European countries and answer American concerns as well about the fact, especially if Trump is going to get another term in the White House. You know, he was very big on this, wasn't he, when he was last in the White House, that we are going to do our bit, I suppose. So Starmer really has got one option here, which is to say to the world, well, you all need to raise your defence spending and we're going to do it first, but then we're going to have to pay for it.
Well, I mean, this is probably the easiest thing for him to posture about, because we are one of 3 countries, other than the US and Greece, surprisingly, but not for the reasons that you think, that actually meets its NATO defence spending. So all other countries don't meet it. We're the only country, other than those 2, that does meet it. The question is, if you're going to say that we should increase it, well, when are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? How much pressure are you going to put on other NATO members to do that? But he doesn't. The thing is, he can talk big and not deliver on very much because we already meet our spending requirements. That's the thing. So he doesn't really have to do much. We're already there.
So this is a brilliant introduction to the world stage. He's going to go in and absolutely rock this thing, I think.
He can't possibly fail on this unless he actually cuts the spending.
But it was interesting when we heard that phone call between Biden and Starmer earlier this week, and it was actually Biden that said first about our special relationship. So it's like it's going. It looks like our relationship with the US.
Endorsement from Joe Biden at this stage in Joe Biden's life is,
the president of America.
I get that, but does he?
I'm not sure he knows it. To be honest, he's wondering where he is.
5-star review from Joe Biden at this stage. I'm not sure is what's one. But this is going to be big. But look, politically speaking, and for the optics, I know people hate that word, but the optics out there, it's good. Starmer's out there now. He's on the world stage. I mean, he can say he's being given in some ways a great thing from the outgoing Conservative government, because we're meeting various defence spending commitments. The other aspect to it is that we are I mean, our army is. You could fit our entire armed forces, I think, into Wembley Stadium.
Well,
which is mad.
And now we're not doing national service.
Falling through the floor. That's the main reason. I mean,
and I think what they do is they just pull us out as specialist teams to go in. We know that we're out there in the Ukraine supporting them and helping them. So we're just used as a specialist force now by the US. If we need them to go in that particular area, because we're not big enough to take anyone on. We don't have enough weapons to be able to do so. So we are like a reserve team that goes in. You know,
we'll have to watch this space. So this is a big story. It's on the majority of the front pages tomorrow. So I imagine it will be leading a lot of the discussions tomorrow as well. But another topic I want to get to tonight is, despite their landslide, it's difficult for Labour to ignore the impact that the Muslim vote had on the election, with big players like Jonathan Ashworth losing his seat, Wes Streeting winning by just a 500-vote margin. Well, Sir Keir Starmer was asked whether there was trust issues between his party and the Muslim community. So here was his response.
Well, we've got a strong mandate. Of course, where we didn't secure the votes, we'll address that. But I don't think there's any disputing the strength of the mandate that we have.
So one of their re-elected MPs, Apsana Begum, has hit back now at Keir Starmer, branding it awful and an opportunity ignored, what he just said there, to assure British Muslims that he was listening. But after scenes such as this that Jess Phillips faced, should Starmer be bowing to this mob?
This election has been... Can you throw them out?
Yeah, I mean, look, there was numerous reports throughout the course of this election campaign, Stephen, of pro-Palestine groups standing on endorsed by the organisation the muslimvote.co.uk, where people like Jess Phillips say they have things like the tyres let down, women were abused, all this stuff. Well, I'm sorry, but why should there be some kind of consideration for Keir Starmer to start pandering to them?
Well, there shouldn't be any consideration for him to pander to anybody. At the end of the day, he has to be able to govern a country under the law and with respect to everybody within that. And those people who stand outside of the law, who don't respect other people, that as his job as a Prime Minister, has to ensure that those people are prosecuted, prevented from doing what they're doing. This is why I have a problem with him when we talked about all those other issues that we've done on the show today, whether it's criminals, immigration. If you start to ignore one, you're going to allow others to take hold of the field and say, you're ignoring them, it's my turn to get in.
I mean, if this lot as well, the kind of pro-Palestine brigade, actually just scratched the surface on it. So we now have a Foreign Secretary who has come out and said that, you know, they would respect some kind of arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. They've called for the halt of arms sales to Israel. You've also got Jess Phillips, who's now going to be in amongst the Foreign Office as well, I think, who resigned initially over the ceasefire stuff. Keir Starmer now was accosted in a Power League changing room by the looks of things, asked about ceasefire, said immediate ceasefire. So he's actually doing what these people want.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this whole idea of him losing the Muslim vote, and I'm sorry, it's after 9 p.m, so I'm going to say, who cares? Who cares? Because we shouldn't want to try and encourage this sort of sectarianism in our politics. We don't want... If you want, you can vote for the Muslim Party of Britain. But unfortunately, you live in the United Kingdom, and it's the interest of all people that live in this country that matter, not the interest of people that is based on religion or your sort of your tribe or whatever. And so I'm sorry, this, like, if my MP came up to me and said, oh, this is an opportunity ignored, I'm like, OK, great, go form your own party. Who cares?
What do you think? What do you think about it all?
I just don't feel great about conflating the Muslim vote and conflating people with concerns about Gaza with people letting down people's tyres and acting like absolute idiots. I think Jess Phillips herself has said those people that are being vandals, being badly behaved, they represent no one. They're separate. Like, don't people with concerns about Gaza are represented across the country.
By the way,
that is not
seated her. Yeah. So she's not talking about it from. And I know Jess Phillips, and she doesn't necessarily play like sort of the same kind of woke left game. But I think what she's saying is very fair. She almost lost her seat to this pressure group that basically wanted her to vote on what was happening in Palestine and Israel, which is, I appreciate people's concerns about that. I think we all do, watching what's happening in Gaza. However, this is the UK. You vote based on the interest.
But equally, we can say, within legitimacy, that if there is an argument that's important to people, this is where democracy plays out. Yeah. The point for where you've got with Keir Starmer is whether he should be ashamed or not ashamed of supporting this group of people based on that one particular issue. His job is to rule Britain as Prime Minister for everyone and ignore these particular groups.
Do you not? It did seem like a missed opportunity with his response to that question. It seemed like a really poor response because that was his chance to say, these are all the things I've put in place towards this issue, and put people's minds. He needs to address that electricity and water comment. That's the thing that people are still
I
obsessed
take your point. I do wonder what the optics of it. I mean, we're going to have a little look at what Nigel Farage said in Parliament now. A massive hoo-ha. I mean, by the way, it turned out to be complete rubbish, as we exposed on this show earlier, about Reform hosting AI candidates and things like that, which didn't tell.
Well, he did look different in real life, didn't he? Blimey! I'd do AI if I looked that much better.
But you know, you look at actually the numbers of people there that were going around letting people's tyres down and committing acts of vandalism on people's offices. There's not the same hoo-ha about that, about a bloke who may have used some kind of AI image. But anyway, today did mark the moment when Nigel Farage spoke for the first time in the House of Commons, and he didn't waste an opportunity to have a little jibe at the little man, John Bercow.
You act with great neutrality, that you have brought tremendous dignity to the role as Speaker, so we absolutely endorse you entirely for this job. And it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you and besmirched the office so dreadfully in doing his best to overturn the biggest democratic result in the history of the country.
I particularly enjoyed the eye roll next to him there.
Oh, there were definitely 600
there,
though, weren't there?
Oh, well, there were, but you know what, though? He's right, though, isn't he? Because there was a little man there for quite a while who did his best. He's now been completely disgraced, by the way. I don't think he's even allowed to set foot back in Parliament, is he, John Bercow? Who did his best to overturn the wills of the people.
I have no interest in John Bercow. I think he was a disgrace at the time. He changed him from one side to another just so it could suit himself. He abused people, as we now know, who were working for him. I think that is the most indignified person that ever took that seat, and I'm glad to see the back of him, and I'm glad that I can hear Nigel Farage at least saying the eye roll should have been really for the way that Bercow was in charge, not for what Farage
Well, now we've got a new troublemaker in Parliament, our Nigel.
Nigel Farage.
Well, let's hope that we're going to have some fun and games there.
Well, strap yourselves in. Now, coming up, is it a form of sexual harassment to tell a female colleague that she looks nice? We'll tackle that after I deliver more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something, you know. He's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress her, so he enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, it's time to return now to the very first look at tomorrow's front pages. Let's do it.
See nothing.
All right, everybody, calm down. So, the Eye. Thames Water boss takes £195,000 bonus as the firm asks for 59% bill hikes and dumps double raw sewage. That's a headline, isn't it? Let's go to the Mirror. England bid for Euro glory. Bond of Brothers, they've got there on the front page. Right now, the Daily Mail have got a very powerful front page here. Britain's most despicable drink driver, 3 times over the limit. He drove into the car in front at 141 miles an hour, killed baby Zachary, and then told police sometimes mistakes happen. Grief. The Daily Telegraph. PM could boost size of armed forces. There we go. So they are also focusing on the armed forces spending. Starmer's off to meet the world leaders, isn't he? All right. OK, so as ever, I am joined by a wonderful panel. I've got columnist and broadcaster Esther Crackey, the director of the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Now, is it a form of sexual harassment to tell a female colleague that she looks nice? Well, that's what a recent employment tribunal has ruled after a senior lawyer made the comment to his legal secretary before asking, am I allowed to say that? Well, it's worth noting that there were other incidents that made the employee feel uncomfortable at work. But Esther, on the basis of someone saying someone looks nice, should that count as sexual harassment, do you think, in the workplace?
Absolutely not. In fact, you should be fired for saying that I don't look nice.
Right.
It should be a criminal offence for not complimenting the looks of your female employees.
Because I think what she was also saying was this was accompanied by what she perceived to be like kind of a creepy look at the water cooler type moment.
You see, this only happens if she finds the individual in question unattractive.
Right.
Like,
No, in this one.
I've never heard a woman say it's sexual harassment if someone like Henry Cavill says you look beautiful.
I don't know
but if
who
the
that
person
is,
looks like a toadstool,
Superman.
it's sexual harassment. Seriously, if the man is ugly, it's suddenly harassment.
Right.
Maybe, but not.
Views on this?
Just not in this case. Like when you read the details of this particular case, it really reminds me of anyone who was like, "Oh, she sued McDonald's because it burnt her because the coffee burnt her legs," and then you looked at the pictures and there were like massive burns on.
Yeah,
so when you look into the details of this case, it's horrendous. It was like showing her pornography. But no, if we're talking about,
he's a lawyer. And he has a capability of using another word other than
he's
nice.
a creepy, horrible, gross lawyer.
When we were at school, we were taught nice is a boring word.
Yeah.
Be a better lawyer,
Like
attractive,
resplendent.
gorgeous. You've taken a brilliant word in resplendent. You're about to remove my third word. Right. I had that lined up. You know, that's it.
I do wonder
But
if
he
it's a
should
bit
be
of a
better.
minefield, but I get that. Again, I do want to emphasise that by the sounds of it, in this case, this guy was a bit...
Yeah, he was.
a bit of a
But
creep.
always say everyone looks nice if you think it.
Well, exactly. I mean, I tell you,
compliments go a very long way.
But then it's quite subjective, isn't it? Because you can see a situation where someone in the female in the workplace goes, "Oh, he said he looked nice," and she kind of says that you being a bit creepy about it, even when you weren't being creepy about
only
it.
if he's ugly.
Yeah.
Only if he's ugly.
Only if he's ugly or if he's socially awkward.
All right, well, that's just
I just
spoken
think
on that
it's
one, so
unfair.
I'm content to leave that one there. I think we've managed to trudge our way over another minefield here on Patrick Christys. Now, the left patience on Joe Biden is getting thinner by the day, especially when Democrat lovies such as Jimmy Fallon
This I've got to watch.
are taking a jab at him.
What was that weird face you were making when Trump was talking? You know the face.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. But look, people are worried because sometimes you seem to lose your train of thought mid-sentence, trail off, and then say a random word.
Well, I can tell you that is simply and utterly wheelbarrow.
Yeah, and then now the White House has confirmed that a Parkinson's specialist has evaluated Biden but refused to go into detail on the doctor's multiple visits earlier this year.
Has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist, any specialist that comes to the White House out of privacy.
Well, that's convincing, isn't it? So there we go. We can all go home happy now. Yeah. All right, OK, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. Esther, your greatest Britain.
So it's the guide dog, Jenny, who accompanied the newly elected MP Steve Darlin of the Lib Dems. In the Commons today, look at her.
Oh, we've got a video of the dog. The dog's just out at the bottom of the screen there. So behind Blackrod, there we go. Dog on floor in Commons.
Aww.
You love to see it. Looks bored, doesn't it? But anyway,
It really
go on,
does.
Stephen, who's your greatest Britain?
Well, I was going to say he makes more sense than most of them, but J.K. Rowling, I'll go.
OK.
J.K. Rowling for her stance against Annalise Dodds. J.K. knows who a woman is.
OK, fair enough.
Which
go
is
on,
a pretty
Amy.
low bar.
My greatest Britain nominee is the new Minister for Transport, aka the Minister for High Fashion, Louise Hay, who has been looking phenomenal on her way into number 10.
I think we might have we got a picture of her on her way into number 10? Oh, alas, we've not. Well, anyway,
She looks nice.
Look him up.
She does look... Oh,
But she didn't win because she's beaten by the dog.
The winner is Jenny the Guide Dog. The winner is Jenny the Guide Dog. Right, OK, Union Jackass, Esther. I didn't hear that, but I'm not sure I wanted to. Right, go on.
Annalise Dodds, just because I just think it's ridiculous that she is representing women and she can't define one. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah, we've been over that, but absolutely spot on. I mean, I can't believe that we're in this situation. But go on, Stephen, who's your Union Jackass?
Corbyn, because he just turned around and said, what are we doing here? It's ridiculous.
So this is at the swearing in, isn't it?
At the swearing in.
So you have to pledge allegiance to the King. We've got a clip of this.
Yeah.
This is such a load of nonsense.
I think he was just making awkward small talk, though, wasn't he?
Bit odd, though.
You know, in a queue. You don't...
One by one. Why do you have to queue like school?
It's just absolute nonsense, isn't it, really?
Go on, Amy, who's your Union Jackass?
It's Jimmy Fallon, because... No, it's not. It's Suella Braverman!
She looks nice.
Well, I love both of them, actually. I didn't like what Jilly Fallon did in that video, but also Suella Braverman for saying the progress flag represents children's mutilation and other Trumpian nonsense.
All right. OK, today's winner of the Union Jackass is Jeremy Corbyn for saying it's a load of nonsense getting money. Right, thank you very much, everybody. I've really enjoyed tonight's show, actually. Thank you. Headliners are up next for a more detailed look at all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. I will be back on tomorrow from 9 p.m, and it's important that we all remember that there is nothing else taking place tomorrow at 9 p.m. that's worth watching. It's only this show, so I hope to see you all there.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome back to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Cloudy and damp in the north during the next 24 hours. Drier further south, still with some showers, however, and it's going to stay humid across southern parts of the UK, with humid air from the continent extending across many parts. But that means also a lot of cloud cover, continued risk of thunderstorms for the evening across East Wales into the Midlands and North West England before they ease overnight, and continued outbreaks of persistent rain for many other parts across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, although it stays cloudy overnight, it will be drier and it will be a mild night. Muggy in some spots, 15 or 16 Celsius during the start of the day. But for northern Scotland, where it's increasingly damp, especially the northeast, across parts of Aberdeenshire, that rain driving in on a brisk northeasterly breeze. Likewise, outbreaks of, at times, heavy rain continue across the central belt, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. But for England and Wales, it's drier, although not entirely dry as we start off Wednesday. A lot of low cloud around and some showers here and there. Now, those showers will increasingly move east and north through the morning. Brighter skies develop across southern England and South Wales, and it's going to be warm when the sun comes through, with temperatures reaching 23, 24 Celsius. Not feeling so warm across northeast Scotland, where that rain continues to pile up. And there is the risk of localised flooding with that rain, particularly across parts of Aberdeenshire into the Grampians, 50 to 80 millimetres in places. It's still there for the start of Thursday, albeit easing and pushing into the North Sea. Elsewhere across the UK,
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.